Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to do something a little fun. So, in the preseason, before the 2017 college football season started, I actually made a Excel sheet document where I wrote down every team in the FBS and I went game by game, which games I thought they would win, which games I thought they would lose. I do it every year, not necessarily like this. This is the first time I did it like this. Usually I just kind of like write it down or something. But anyway, I made an Excel document with the game-by-game predictions for every single team. And I just thought it'd be cool now that the regular season is over to go through each team's regular season prediction that I had for them and see how they finished. As you see here, I created this document on Tuesday, July 25th, 2017 at 11:39 p.m. and I modified it one time, or the last time was August 1st, 2017 at 10:32 p.m. So I haven't gone in and changed anything. This is what my predictions were about a month before the season started. Obviously, things of course happen that I didn't expect, injuries and just the typical, this team's better than anybody expected, this team's worse than anybody expected, blah, 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 blah. But we'll get into that. We'll go right by conference as I have the Excel sheet laid out. And that is beginning in the American Athletic Conference. The first team was Cincinnati. I had Cincinnati at 7-5. They end up going 4-8. I'm not going to go game by game, although I will see which teams I got dead on. I think there's a couple teams in here that I predicted 100%, not just the record, but I mean game by game. So then next we had UConn. I had UConn going 1-11 this year, with their only win being at opening up against Holy Cross, but they go 3-9. They get the wins against Temple and Tulsa. So good for them, I guess. Then I had ECU going 5-7. They actually finished the season 3-9. So not good there. Houston. I had Houston going 10-2. They underperformed as far as I expected. They go 7-4. Memphis I had at 9-3. They actually finished the regular season at 10-1. Well, they had a game canceled, so that's another thing. There's going to be a lot of games in here that I predicted that never actually even happened due to the hurricane early in the year. Anyway, that brings us to Navy. I had Navy at 7-5, and right now they are 6-5. They still have the Army game to play. Let's see what happened. So I had Navy losing to Memphis. No, I had them losing to Tulsa, which did not happen, so I guess that one's not 100% yet if they beat Army. I have them beating Army to get to 7-5, so we could get the record right on them. Then I had SMU going 7-5. Or I had SMU going 6-6. They finish 7-5. I had Temple's next. I had Temple. USF is next, actually. I had USF going 10-2. They are 9-2. They had a game canceled, didn't they? Yes, they did. Their UConn game was canceled, which I had them winning. So I had them losing to Houston and at UCF, and those are actually the two games they lost. So, I mean, we got that one perfect. Other than the fact that they never played UConn. Or, no, they had to make up a game against UConn. They never played UMass. So, I'm just going to go ahead and give myself that one. We got USF dead on. That brings us to Temple. I had Temple going 4-8, and they finished the season at 6-6. Tulane I had finishing at 4-8, and they finished the season at 5-7. Tulsa I had at 6-6. They end up 2-10. And UCF I had at 9-3. Of course, they are undefeated. I had them losing to Georgia Tech, at Maryland, and at Navy. Those are some good wins. For UCF, anyway. All right, so then we go to the ACC. I had Boston College going 2-10. So, pretty dramatic difference. They go 7-5 on the season. I had Clemson at 10-2. They are 11-1. I had them losing at Louisville for some reason. I don't know. And then against Florida State, obviously. We'll get into Florida State in about 2 seconds. Let's see. Then I had Duke going 4-8, and they finished 6-6. And oh boy, Florida State. I had Florida State at 11-1, with their only loss being to Alabama. Now let me try and transform myself. Let me put myself back in late July, early August. Man, Florida State was a pretty young team last year. They were really good. They won the Orange Bowl. They're returning a lot of players. I don't think Clemson's going to be as good. I think Florida State's going to be good. And then their quarterback gets killed, and they are not good at all. Which I don't think it would have mattered if Francois played the whole year. I don't think he makes up all these games. They went 5-6 this year. They are playing this weekend, so they will probably go 6-6. They're playing somebody terrible. I forgot. ULM, yeah, Louisiana Monroe, a makeup game. So they'll go 6-6 to make a bowl, but yeah. Definitely not the year we expected from Florida State. And like I said, they were so bad this year, I don't think it was just losing their quarterback. Then Georgia Tech. I had Georgia Tech going 6-6, which they go 5-6. They had a game canceled against UCF. Let's see, I had them losing to Tennessee, which they did. Then I had them winning 2 straight. Had them losing to Pitt. Okay, so we didn't get that one dead on. All right, Louisville I had finishing at 8-4, and they finish at 8-4. But I had them beating Clemson, so obviously did not get this one 100%. And obviously, upsets happen. So I predict upsets in the preseason because they happen. That's why I have Louisville beating UNC or losing to UNC on the road. I don't think UNC is a better team or anything, but you get the point. Anyway, next is Miami. They are obviously a big surprise this year. They are 10-1. Well, that's what they finished, was 10-1. Obviously, they have the ACC championship game, but they had a game canceled. I had them going 9-3, so I actually had them losing to 3 awful teams, at Florida State, at Duke, and at UNC. Ugh. Anyway, NC State, I had going 8-4. They end up 8-4. Let's see if I got them dead on here. I had them starting 4-0, and no, they lost their opening game. Oh well. Next is UNC. For some reason, I had them going 8-4. I really don't know why. They were pretty good last year, right? And I think they were returning a good amount of players. I don't know why else I'd think they're going to be good. But I had them going 8-4. I don't know why. They end up going 3-9. So, not good there. Pitt. I had Pitt going 6-6. And Pitt ends up going 5-7. So not too bad. I had them beating Penn State on the road. Syracuse, I had them going 5-7. They end up 4-8. Virginia, I had going 3-9. Pretty surprising. They end up going 6-6. Did not expect that. Georgia Tech, I had finishing 3-9. Or 9-3, excuse me. And they do finish 9-3. Let's see if we got Georgia Tech nailed. I had them starting 4-0, which they did. Then I had them losing to Clemson, which they did, then winning their next 3, which they did, and then losing to Miami and Georgia Tech, which they did, and then winning the last 2. So there we go. We have Virginia Tech 100%. Boom. So that's one team from each conference so far that I nailed game for game. All right, and then I had Wake Forest finishing 5-7, and they end up finishing 7-5. So now let's get into the Big 12. I had Baylor finishing 6-6. I knew they weren't going to be a very good team, but didn't expect what actually happened. They obviously go 1-11. Gross. Iowa State, I had going 4-8, so big surprise there as far as I'm concerned. They end up going 7-5 this year. Kansas, I had at 1-11. Their only win being against Southeastern, or I don't even know. I assume it's Southeastern Southeastern. That sounds so weird to say. Southeast. Okay, that makes sense. Southeast, Mississippi State. And that's exactly what happened. So we nailed Kansas as well. Not that that was hard. They are truly terrible. So, yeah, 1-11 with their one win being the FCS opponent and the rest losses. That's what happened. Kansas State, I had 8-4, and they ended up going 7-5. Oklahoma, I had at 10-2. They end up at 11-1. Oklahoma State. 9-3 is what I had them. 9-3 is what they finished. Let's see. I had them losing to TCU, which they did. I had them losing at Texas, which they did not. And then, okay, so not 100% there. All right, that's all right. TCU, I had at 9-3. They are 10-2. Texas, I thought Texas would be good. I don't know. I thought not Charlie Strong. I thought Tom Herman would come in there and kind of have like a Jim Harbaugh type year, his first year at Michigan, whereas the team that, hasn't really been good, but they have good players on the roster and they're returning some guys and you're not expecting a lot from them, but they play pretty good. But yeah, Texas ends up going 6-6. I had them at 10-2. Not good. Texas Tech, I had at 4-8. They ended up 6-6. West Virginia, I had at 7-5, and they end up 7-5. Let's see. I had them losing to Virginia Tech, which they do. I had them losing to TCU, which they do. And then I had them beating OK State, which they did not. So, didn't get Virginia Tech. But we got Kansas, so still, at least one team from every conference I've gotten game for game so far, which brings us to the Big Ten. Let's see what went on here. I had Illinois at 3-9. And they end up going 2-10. That Rutgers game. Indiana, I had at 8-4. Indiana was a pretty good team last year, and they actually returned a lot of players, but just couldn't get it done this year. They ended up 5-7. Iowa, I had at 6-6. They end up at 7-5. I don't care to check because I got it wrong, but I think I had them losing Iowa State, which they ended up winning. I was going to say, I think Ohio State was the only game I got wrong in that, but it's not. Anyway, Maryland, I had at 6-6. They end up going 4-8. I think they would have probably been at 6-6 had they kept their quarterback because they played pretty well to start the season against Texas. Michigan, I had at 10-2. They end up 8-4. Rutgers. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep looking at the ESPN standings, which is what I'm using to compare these when I should be looking at my Excel so I correctly name the next team. Michigan State, I had at 4-8. They were awful last year. They had an awful offseason. I expected them to be awful. They actually go 9-3. I still don't think they're good. They didn't beat anybody, but Penn State, I guess. Anyway, blown out against Notre Dame at home. Blown out against Ohio State. Lost to Northwestern. Minnesota, I had at 6-6. They end up going 5-7. Nebraska, I had Nebraska at 7-5. I don't know why. They end up going 4-8. Northwestern, I had at 9-3, which is exactly what they end up doing. Let's see if I got game by game here. I had them losing 3 in a row: Wisconsin, Penn State, Maryland. Ooh, they lost Wisconsin, Penn State. They beat Maryland, lost to Duke. So almost got Northwestern nailed down. Then we had Ohio State. I had Ohio State at 10-2, which is what they end up. But obviously the 2 losses I had. Well, no, I had them losing to Oklahoma. So yeah, we got that. Penn State, I wasn't convinced they were a very good team coming in like everybody else was. I had them at 9-3, but they do end up going 10-2, so good for them, I guess. Purdue, I had at 3-9, so really impressed with what Jeff Brom did at Purdue. They end up going 6-6. I could tell 3 weeks into the season this one wasn't going to be true. Not just because they were already 2-9, but they looked pretty impressive. Then Rutgers. Oh man, I had Rutgers at 1-11. So hey, hats off to Chris Ash and Rutgers. They end up going 4-8. And Wisconsin, I had it 12-0. So obviously I nailed them 100%. So once again, we keep our streak alive of at least one team from every conference. I got game by game. This wasn't really hard though. I mean, look at that schedule, man. Even as a Michigan fan, I knew they were probably going to win that game. And frankly, that was probably their toughest game all year. Anyway. Then we go to the Conference USA. Charlotte. I had Charlotte at going 3-9. They end up going 1-11. FAU I had at 7-5. They end up going 9-3. FIU I had at 2-10. They end up going 7-4. So that's a big difference. And I didn't just crap these out. I actually looked at the teams, how they were last year, how many players they had coming back, stuff like that, to actually make these opinions. So some of these teams just generally impressed me. I wasn't just throwing shit at the wall. Louisiana Tech, I think most of my picks so far have been pretty close. 1-2 games off and a couple spot on. And so far, one in every conference, literally spot on game for game. Anyway, Louisiana Tech, I had at 9-3. They end up going 6-6, so pretty surprised there. Marshall goes 5-7, or I had them at 5-7. They end up going 7-5. Middle Tennessee, I had at 7-5. They end up going 6-6. North Texas, I had at 4-8. They win the division at 9-3. So exceeded some expectations there. Old Dominion, I had at 8-4. They end up going 5-7. Rice, I had at 3-9. They end up going 1-11. Southern Mississippi, I had at 6-6. They end up going 8-4. UAB, first season back after not having a program for 2 years, I think. Really surprised by them. They go 8-4 in their first season back. I don't think anybody expected that. I had them at 3-9 for a reason. Texas San Antonio, I had going 7-5. That was a mistake. They go 6-5. So, maybe not a mistake. I don't know. I'm not going to edit this. Usually I edit my videos if I say something stupid. I thought UTSA had a bad regular season, but apparently not. It was only one game off. But they would have lost. It looks like their game against Houston got canceled. They never made it up, so they would have been 6-6. Anyway. Then we had UTEP. I had UTEP at 2-10. Wishful thinking. They go 0-12. And then Western Kentucky, I expected them to be pretty good. I had them at 9-3. They only end up at 6-6. So I think we failed. Oh no, our streak is broken. That was our first conference where we didn't have a team game for game correctly picked. Oh well. Then we go to the independents of the FBS. Only 4 teams. Starting with Army. I had Army at 8-4. They are 8-3. With the Army-Navy game coming up. Let's see, I had them losing at Ohio State, which they obviously did. And I also had them losing to Eastern Michigan, which they almost did. They only won by 1 point. I had them beating Tulane, which they did not. So, almost game for game. Might have the record right, though, if they lose to Navy, which I predicted they will. Back in August. Then, oh man, I had BYU at 9-3. I don't know. I can't tell you why I had BYU at 9-3, but for some reason I did. They ended up going 4-9. 4-9. Did they play Hawaii? They might have played Hawaii in their extra game. 4-9. 9-3. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, okay, yeah. I did math wrong. I technically had them at 10-3 then. I didn't realize they had 13 games. Anyway, next was UMass. I had UMass going 2-10. They go 4-7. I think they have another game this weekend. Notre Dame, I had at 5-7. They exceeded my expectations a bit. They go 9-3. Then we go to the MAC. I had Akron at 4-8. They go 7-5 and win the division. So pretty surprising year for Akron. Ball State, I had at 3-9. They end up at 2-10. Bowling Green, I had at 3-9. They end up at 2-10. Buffalo, I had at 2-10. They end up 6-6. Really surprised by Buffalo. They have been awful the last few years. Central Michigan, I had at 8-4. They end up 8-4. Let's see who I had them losing to. I had them losing to Ohio and Toledo back-to-back, their first 2 losses, and they end up losing at Syracuse. So, no. They actually lost their 3 games before the 2 I predicted. Anyway. Then we have Eastern Michigan. I thought Eastern Michigan would be really good. Well, not really good. But they made their first bowl game in like 20-something years last year, and they've returned their quarterback, their running back, their top 3 receivers. They had a lot of close losses this year. I had them at 7-5. They actually end up at 5-7. But they were literally like 1 play away from being 9-3 in all their games, including at Kentucky and at Army. And they obviously got their first ever Power 5 win at Rutgers. Kent State, I had it 3-9. They end up going 2-10. Miami, Ohio, I had it 9-3. They end up going 5-7. All these teams I predicted to go 3-9 just went 2-10. NIU, I had it 6-6. They end up at 8-4. Ohio, I had it 9-3. They end up at 8-4. Toledo, I had as 11-1. They end up 10-2. Western Michigan, I had a 9-3. I expected to drop off with PJ Fleck, but I thought they would still be a pretty good team just because of how he recruited compared to the rest of the MAC. But they end up going 6-6. So that brings us to the Mountain West Conference. Starting with Air Force, I had Air Force going 4-8. They end up going 5-7. Boise State, I had at 9-3, which is what they do. But I can already tell I did not get game for game because they just lost to Fresno State. Colorado State, I had at 8-4, and they end up going 7-5. Fresno State, I had at 4-8, but they go 9-3. So pretty surprising for Fresno State, as far as I'm concerned. Hawaii, I had at 3-9, and they go 3-9. Let's see, I had them beating Idaho State, or not. I had them beating Western Carolina, San Jose State, Fresno State. Well, that didn't happen. All right. Nevada, I had at 4-8, and they go 3-9. New Mexico, I had at 4-8, and they go 3-9. San Diego State, I had at 10-2. And they go 10-2. Let's see. I had them losing to Arizona State and Stanford. They beat Stanford, did they not? Yeah, they did. San Jose State, I had going 2-10. They go 2-11. So they had an extra game as well. So I had them beating Cal Poly and Fresno State, which they beat Cal Poly, but they also beat Wyoming. So didn't get them 100%, but I got their record right. Kinda. Apparently they had 13 games. But still, I only picked them to win 2. Anyway, UNLV I had at 3-9. They end up going 5-7. Utah State I had at 4-8. They end up going 6-6. And then Wyoming I had at 8-4, and they end up going 7-5. I need to get another team 100%. It's been a while. Then we go to the Pac-12. Arizona, I had at 3-9. I didn't like Arizona. I don't know why. I just didn't think they'd be any good. But they end up going 7-5. Arizona State, I also had at 3-9. And they also end up going 7-5. So I apologize to the state of Arizona. I don't know why I thought you guys would suck. Anyway, Cal, I had at 4-8. They end up going... No, I lost them. They end up going 5-7. Colorado, I had at 10-2. I don't know. They end up going 5-7. Oregon, I had at... Well, that's not right. I wrote down 4-8, but I actually had them at 8-4. Actually, I said I'm not going to edit my audio, and I'm not. But I guess I'll actually go in and change this for my screenshot. So, what I just said means nothing to you people. I had 4-8 written underneath them on accident, but I clearly have them going 8-4. Anyway, Oregon I had going 8-4. They go 7-5. Oregon State, I had them going 4-8, but they end up going 1-11. Stanford I had going 10-2. They go 9-3. UCLA I had at 7-5. They end up going 6-6. USC thought they would be good. I had them going 11-1. They end up, of course, going 10-2. Utah, I had at 4-8. They end up going 6-6. Washington, I thought they'd go undefeated this year. I don't know. They end up going 10-0 or 10-2. Then Washington State, I had at 9-3. They end up at 9-3. Let's see who I had them losing to. I had them losing to USC, Stanford, and Washington. They beat Stanford. Yeah. And they also beat USC. Oh, well. So now, to the SEC we go. Hey, look at this. I can already tell I got 100% again, finally. Alabama, I had it at 11-1 with their one loss being on the road against Auburn, and that's what happened. So there's another game for game we got right. Arkansas, I had it 5-7, wishful thinking. They go 4-8. Auburn, I had it 9-3. They end up 10-2. Wait, that's not right. All right, hold on. I had Auburn at 10-2, which is what they ended up. But let's see if I got game by game. I had them losing at LSU and at Clemson. And that's what happened. Okay. Boom. All right. So look at that. 2 of the first 3 teams in the SEC, we got 100% game by game or game for game. Florida. Oh, I had Florida going 8-4. They ended up going 4-7. Georgia, I had at 10-2. They end up 11-1. Kentucky, I had at 7-5. They end up at 7-5. I had them losing to South Carolina, which didn't happen. I also had them losing to Florida, which did happen. Let's see. LSU, I had it 10-2. They end up going 9-3. Mississippi State, I had it 6-6. They end up at 8-4. Missouri, I had it 5-7. They end up at 7-5. Mississippi, I had it 5-7. They end up at 6-6. South Carolina, I had it 5-7. They end up 8-4. Tennessee, I had Tennessee at 10-2. I don't know. They end up going 4-8. Texas A&M, I had at 8-4. They end up 7-5. Vanderbilt, I had at 5-7, and they end up at 5-7. Ooh, let's see if I got them. 3-0. Yup. Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi. South Carolina, yep. Washington, yep. Kentucky, yep. Oh, fuck. I had Vanderbilt game for game until the last 2 weeks. I had them beating Missouri, losing to Tennessee. The opposite happened. To get, whatever. All right, so then we go to the Sun Belt. This is actually going to be a little tricky because the Sun Belt, they have a couple of games this week. So we'll see. Well, we will get the idea if we're close or not. Who really cares? App State, I thought they'd be good. I had them at 11-1 with their only loss being against Georgia. That obviously is not going to happen. They're 7-4 right now. Arkansas State, I had it 5-7. Right now they are 7-3. Coastal Carolina, in their first season in the FBS, I had going 5-7. They're 2-9. I believe they're playing again. Maybe they just had a game canceled. Yeah, they still got a game to play, but it's not going to help. Georgia Southern, I had it 6-6, and right now they are 2-9 as well. Ugh. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't watch Sunbelt football, so these were just all off what they did last year, what kind of players they had coming back, and just my, whatever knowledge I did have of these teams, which wasn't much. Georgia State, I had it 4-8. They are 6-4 right now. They got one more game to play. Had a game canceled. Idaho, I had it 7-5. They are 3-8. Louisiana Lafayette, or I think they just call themselves Louisiana now. I had it 5-7. Right now they're 5-6. So let's see here. I have them. Okay. Well, I won't get them 100% game for game because I had them beating Louisiana Monroe, which they did not. But if they lose this weekend, I could get their record right at least. Louisiana Monroe, I had going 4-8. Right now they are 4-7. Obviously won't get them 100% though, since I got the Louisiana Lafayette game wrong. But again, if they lose this week, I could have their record right. New Mexico State, I had 1-11. They're actually 5-6 right now. Ooh, I really hope they win. Haven't they not made a bowl in like forever? Like the 70s? So hopefully they win and get bowl eligible. Although there's already enough bowl eligible teams, so I don't know if they'd make a bowl anyway. That would suck. South Alabama, I had at 4-8, and they are, where are they at? 4-7. So again, another case where if they lose, I could get their record right. Let's see if I could get game by game right. I had them beating Alabama A&M, which they did, then Troy and ULM, which no. I had them losing at Troy. They beat Troy. All right. Then Texas State, I had it 2-10. And hey, look at that. They're 2-10. I had them beating Houston Baptist and New Mexico State. They beat Houston Baptist, of course, but their other win was Coastal Carolina. And then finally, Troy, I had it 10-2, and they are 9-2 right now. I had them losing to Boise State, which they did, and I had them losing at LSU, which they did not. Big upset. Their other loss was South Alabama. So if they win, I'll get the record right, but won't get 100%. So there you have it. Those were my preseason predictions that I wrote down in this Excel document back in July, August, before the season started. I think I did pretty good overall. Obviously, there's going to be a few teams that were way overrated in my opinion, or way underrated in my opinion. And there's a few teams, just 1-2 games off, and I think I didn't count them, but I think there was a good amount of teams that I got their record right. And there was 6 teams, Auburn, Alabama, Wisconsin, Kansas, Virginia Tech, and South Florida, that I got game for game. So that's pretty good, huh? Anyway, thank you for watching this. Just something I thought I'd do for fun. Judge my preseason predictions to what actually happened. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you whenever all the bowl games are announced, because then I will be making my prediction video for each and every one of those. So I'll see you guys then. Be sure to subscribe, and goodbye.